Well, welcome everyone to the 2020 first webinar for Wisconsin's Green Fire annual meeting. My name is Terry Dalton and I'm the president of the board of Wisconsin's Green Fire. And I'm just here to say a few comments at the very beginning about the program today and our overall annual meeting. And also to give you just a little background on Green Fire and what our mission is and where we started. So at the outset, I just like to give a couple details on Zoom technology for those who might not have experienced a Zoom webinar before. A couple things to note is you can either go to a full screen or a speaker view. That'll kind of change the view that you see on your computer screen. But if you're looking at the full screen, down along the bottom, you'll see that there's a series of buttons down at the bottom, a mute button on the far left, which you'll probably want to click on when speakers are talking, just in case your phone rings in the background or something else happens. Also a video, you can start or stop video on your own camera, so you can either show up as a participant or just be a blank screen. There's also a chat item in the middle, and that's where we're asking if you have comments or questions to make during the presentations, to enter those into the chat, and then Dolly Ledeen and I will be fielding those chats into questions and comments as we move through the program today. If you have other questions about the technology, feel free to pop those into that chat room, and one of our co-hosts here will get back to you and help you sort out what's going on with your technology, hopefully. So that said, I think that's kind of the upshot for the logistics. Today we're going to be having a series of speakers and then also breaking out into breakout rooms for group discussion later. That'll all be handled by our expert webinar manager who's going to be funneling us into rooms. Nancy Turek's doing that for us, and we really appreciate her expertise there. So I was just going to start with a little, just a Cliff Notes version on Green Fire and kind of a story about where we came from and what our mission is. And as you can see on the screen here, we have a title for our annual meeting. And I put a picture up there because unlike our previous annual meetings, this one is online, as everything is these days. So it's going to be a really different setting for us. We're kind of missing all the socializing as folks are, but I think this is, it's going to be also fun for us to experience that technology. So how did Green Fire get started 4 years ago? Well, I have to say, for me, it all started with a good cup of coffee, like many things do. And if you're a tea drinker, you could envision this as a good cup of tea. But 4 years ago, just about this time of year, I think there were a lot of people thinking about ways that we could help our society and our conservation history and the future of conservation in Wisconsin improve. And for me, it was just sitting around one morning having a conversation with my husband about ways that we could maybe participate in conservation and preventing and preparing Wisconsin for the future more effectively. So we called together about 40 people who met in February of that year to get a few ideas on what might a group of people who are interested in natural resources, coming from kind of a professional base of natural resource professionals, scientists, educators, communicators, do to help infuse more science and more expertise into management of natural resources in Wisconsin. Based on that, we pulled together our first annual meeting, and that was the 2017 function. And Fred, if you could put the next slide up. We went from that first meeting of about 40 people to our very first annual meeting in 2017 at the Aldo Leopold Center. We had about 90 people come to that meeting. And really, one of the things we did at that session was look at our conservation roots. Why has Wisconsin always been such a leader in conservation? And Nelson by infusing more science and expertise into how our state was running. The next year, our next annual meeting, if you want to go ahead to the next slide, Fred, we went to the other end of the state, up to the Northern Great Lakes Visitor Center in Ashland. I think he's going to click on that one here.
The slide should be already up.
Okay, there it is. It might be my internet lag here in the hinterlands. I'm up in Mercer, Wisconsin in Iron County, so sometimes it's a little slow. Anyway, that year, what we really wanted to do is think about how could we effectively communicate science. And people were talking about science communications left and right that year. And what we really wanted to do was get outside of the echo chamber of just our own science colleagues and get out and talk to people with from other walks of life. People from a more traditional sporting heritage, people from other walks of life, indigenous, Native American people, other urban people, people who might have different backgrounds to bring into that, but would have specialties in communication. Then the following year, we went to Tree Haven, and that year we really were focusing on how we could bring more people together to work on our conservation issues. And we really focused that year on the formation of a cadre of students who could help us reach out. As you can see from this photo, there's a certain age demographic that we had in our founding group, and we really wanted to expand beyond that and get more viewpoints in. So with that, we moved into this year's session. And what we're really hoping to do initially, we were going to be in Madison and really reaching out to folks in the southern part of the state and looking at the politics that are going on around conservation and all the challenges that we've been facing in the last few years. But with COVID coming on and our virtual meeting, we've had to shift that a little bit. So we aren't actually in Madison, but we are still following those same themes. And today, our first session is looking at how we can further build on the initial inclusion of the students that came to our annual meeting last year and that kind of leadership group we have been working with. How can we broaden that, reach out across a larger segment of young people in our state and form stronger alliances and make it meaningful for them and helpful for us. So that's kind of where we're at today. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Fred to give a little bit of a more substantive background review of what Greenfire does for those of you who might not be familiar with the organization, or you might be tuning in for the first time to learn a little bit more about us. So, Fred.
Great, thank you, Terry, and welcome everyone. We're glad you all were able to make time for this program on a cold, rainy, beginning of fall sort of day here in Wisconsin. My name is Fred Clark, and I'm the Executive Director of Wisconsin's Greenfire. And I want to share a little bit more building on what Terry laid out in terms of who and what we are as an organization. You know, my own engagement with Greenfire really began at that 2017 meeting that Terry showed a slide of at the Leopold Center in Baraboo. And I really showed up just to see a little bit and learn a little bit more about this newly forming organization I'd been hearing about. And what immediately impressed me was the number of people, the 100 people or so in that room who really made up a lot of the people I have regarded as conservation heroes in my own career here in Wisconsin. And I think if Greenfire means anything to the people who know us, it's that we really reflect a broad spectrum of people who have made their careers around conservation of the environment and natural resources here in Wisconsin. And when you learn about the tradition and the reputation Wisconsin has had as a leader in natural resources and environmental protection, that reputation is because of many of the people who are very active in Greenfire today, and including many of the people on this call today. So I feel lucky personally every day that I get to do this job and work with the members that we have. And the goal for our program today is really to introduce ourselves to many of you, whether you're students or new to the organization. We're glad that you're here. our goals as an organization are to really serve as the connection point for the role of science and natural resources. Very broadly, we bring both scientific knowledge as well as a lot of career expertise around environmental programs, around wildlife, around the sort of biological and the science aspects of natural resources, as well as understanding the law and the rules and the programs that go behind how we care for these resources here in Wisconsin. So in many respects, we're the institutional memory for conservation in this state, and we do our best to play that role by engaging with policymakers, engaging with the public, providing objective resource information, and engaging others around those goals. We have a fantastic board of directors comprised of 12 people, many of whom are on the call today, and you'll have a chance to meet a bit more of. But many of our board members were founding members of the organization, but really reflect the balance of both expertise in natural resources as well as other fields. And really lucky for all of their involvement. It's Terry Dalton. I'm going to go over on this photo clockwise, right to left to right, with Terry Dalton, Jim Perry, Ron Eckstein, and Robert Gerda on the top row, Michael Kane, Paula Liberty, Tom Giroux, and Tom Hauge in the center row, and Bob Martini, Mike Meyer, excuse me, Kate Riley, and Shannon Thielman on the bottom row. And we're very fortunate and looking forward to adding a new set of board members here in the next month. And I should say about our board, not only do our board members provide governance for the organization and help set policy in our broad direction, but many of them are also very active with our program work. We have a very hands-on board of directors, and we're fortunate for that. Our small and growing staff team includes yours truly as executive director, Nancy Larson, our assistant director, a career water resources program manager in the DNR. Sarah Wilkins is our science director. Sarah came on board in May and has brought a lot of national experience working on climate change and other issues. She supports the work of a lot of our work groups. Paul Heinen, our legislative liaison, has a Rolodex as big as the tire on your car. And not only does Paul know everyone in Wisconsin, but he's spent 35 years working in conservation and is our face in the Capitol and in many of the agencies where we work. Ruth Ann Lee is our administrator who loans us some of her time from her primary job, which is helping run the Wisconsin Wildlife Federation up in Poinet. And finally, our newest employee, Anna Hawley, has just joined us in the last 2 weeks. She's on the call today. And Anna came to us after 10 years working at the Aldo Leopold Foundation and will be helping us with our communication programs. So we're really at a point now as an organization where we're gaining the capacity to really do more important work and really fulfill the mission that Terry and the founders had for us when we were started. And the really incredible asset that we have are our members. Right now, we're up to more than 450 members in the organization, and more than half of those folks are people with conservation backgrounds and experience, like many of the people that you see in this picture. And our real niche as an organization is to capture that knowledge, that expertise and that institutional knowledge, and bring it to bear, both in terms of policy and in terms of education. And we'll talk a bit more today about how specifically we do that. In terms of some of the issues that we take on, we organize ourselves around a number of issue areas. That includes air quality, climate change, energy policy, environmental education, fisheries, wildlife, forestry, public lands, water resources and environmental rules, and the important structure that we have around our public trust in water and wetlands. And for each of these issue areas, we have a work group who is made up of a number of our members with expertise in those areas, and all of whom contribute to the work that we do. And in fact, most of our effort as an organization comes from our volunteer members. So in terms of our outputs and accomplishments, it's fairly broad. A piece of work that we are focused on every 2 years is a series of issue briefing papers we call Opportunities Now. That's available on our website, and we're hard at work right now on the next version of that. Last year, Greenfire co-sponsored a Climate Fast Forward conference together with the Wisconsin Academy of Arts and Sciences and Letters, and our members were a major part of putting that program on. To shift gears completely, one of our field programs has been to sponsor location of deer carcass dumpsters, which doesn't always look pretty, but this is a really critical tool in helping slow the spread, forgive me, of chronic wasting disease here in Wisconsin. We provide a lot of testimony to legislatures, legislative committees, and individual legislators. And we also, when we're allowed to, and we hope to do more of that next year, spend time in the field with our own members, as well as educating the public. The one piece of work that you don't hear from us often is really a quiet form of work, and that involves meetings and conversations that we have with both agency staff, as well as staff from legislators and staff from the governor's office. Greenfire is a go-to organization for our expertise. And just as an example, tomorrow, several of our members will be meeting with the secretary from the Department of Ag, Trade and Consumer Protection and his staff. Why? Well, because we have members who spent 30 years working in that agency, and that kind of knowledge is really valuable for the people in those positions today. So what we'd like to do is ask several of our members who are here on the call to give us a little bit of additional background on specific work that we're doing. And so what we're going to have here are a series of just 2-minute updates from some of our work group chairs. And I think that Tom Hauge, if you're here, Tom is the co-chair along with Adrian Weideman of our wildlife work groups, one of our more active groups. And Tom, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thanks, Fred, and welcome to the group. As Fred indicated, Adrian Weideman and myself serve as the co-chairs for the wildlife work group. Like all of the topics that are have been identified for Greenfire to work on, the wildlife subject of wildlife conservation in Wisconsin is a broad one, ranging from endangered and threatened species to dealing with our very common species and the management of that. A good example, white-tailed deer. We have probably on the order of 30-some members, Greenfire members, who the wildlife work group and assist Adrian and I in our work, which includes commenting on species conservation plans. We've provided comments on recent updates to conservation plans for black bear, prairie chickens, wolves, ruffed grouse. At the federal level, we don't work at that level much unless we feel an issue is so important to the state that it's worth our time. One of those is a proposal to create a funding source for non-game species, and is known as Restoring the America's Wildlife Act. And so we've been working to gain Wisconsin congressional support for that bill. As Fred indicated, we also comment on DNR regulatory actions on a regular basis or in the legislature. And as he showed the picture of too, I have the distinct pleasure of being Greenfire's deer Carcass Dumpster King, which is located in Sauk County, which is a county that has an awful lot of CWD in it. And Greenfire puts the bill for the carcass, the dumpster, and then I make sure that everything's operating smoothly at that site. But that's a real snapshot view of the wildlife world, Fred.
Great, thanks, Tom. And shifting gears somewhat, Paul LaLiberty, if you're on, Paul is the chair of our environmental rules and water quality work group, and he'll share a few minutes about the work that that group does.
Thank you, Fred. We kind of span a broad range of management actions by the state of Wisconsin. That includes the way wastewater is handled, water supplies are handled, solid and hazardous waste, agricultural, urban runoff, lake management, and a bunch of other things. So we have a broad span of things that we could get involved in, and it all depends on our internal expertise. If we don't have the expertise on the subject, we can't engage in the issue. We have, I guess, two general ways of engagement. The first one I'd call reactive, where we react to things that are coming down the road, such as draft rules or draft guidance documents. If we can put some expertise to bear on it, we will frequently give some suggestions and advice either directly to state agencies or to other non-government organizations who then take our science and they make the contacts. And we also have proactive work. And an example of something that I'd say started as reactive and is transitioning now to proactive is the PFAS chemicals, also known as the forever chemicals. We're trying to get a little more proactive in that. And we've been proactive from the outset on the relationship between agriculture and water quality. We put out a lot of materials on that. We've got videos and policy papers. And as Fred mentioned, we're meeting with the state agencies, both DNR and Department of Agriculture, to try to give them our suggestions and guidance on how to do some important work. So that's what our work group does.
Thanks, Paul. Another one of our really important work groups that has a broad portfolio is our climate change work group. And Nancy Turek, are you ready to brief us? Okay, well, as our hope for us on that effort. So, Ron, would you like to share more about the work of that group?
Sure. Thank you, Fred. And the Public Lands and Forestry Work Group, I co-chair with John Robinson out of Wausau, who's retired from DNR, and I'm retired as a wildlife biologist with DNR, and I live here in Rhinelander. And for public lands, most of our work is supporting the Knowles-Nelson Stewardship Program and renewing it again. It's a major challenge that we're going to be working on again this year to renew that land acquisition program for state lands and county forest lands and nonprofit land purchases. On the forestry angle, we're not about boards and cords. Instead, we're about forest habitat for wildlife and forest biodiversity for the full range of plants and animals that live in forests. And the work we do there is looking at working mostly with the DNR Division of Forestry and their managers to look at regional master plans and forestry plans, trying to integrate the wildlife habitat and forest biodiversity into long-term and short-term forest management plans. So that's kind of a quick review of what we do.
Thanks, Ron. Well, I'll make a sort of closing comment on my end regarding climate change. And as I know that everyone on this call knows, this is really the existential threat of our lifetimes. And we're seeing the effects of it right now in the Gulf Coast and in California and Colorado. There's no mistake about the urgency of this issue. As a conservation organization, I think we bring some special expertise around climate change, especially the degree to which it's affecting everything from agricultural systems to wildlife populations to our terrestrial systems such as forests and prairies and wetlands. And that's a real niche area where Greenfire brings expertise, both in terms of how these systems are adapting to the stresses of a changing climate, as well as the opportunities that exist for us to manage natural resources in a way that can mitigate climate change by sequestering carbon. So this is really an important and growing focal area that touches almost everything else we do. So with that as an overview, Dolly, I think that we're right on time. And I'd love to turn it back over to you so we can learn more from the other folks that are on the call.
Okay, great. So I'm Dolly Ledeen. I'm the chair of one of the work groups, the Environmental Education Work Group. And one of the main projects and areas of work that we have is involving students. And starting with college students, both undergrad and graduate students. And so just to summarize a little more what some things that Fred said and then lead into the next part is our product, what we're trying to sell, what we're trying to forward is science. That's our product. It's science that can better inform decision makers, can better inform public policy. So our product is science. Our strength is the expertise that we have. So all the experience that people that you met today and many others have that can be brought to bear on looking at issues and analyzing issues that are being decided in our state today. But one of our other strengths and one of the main methods that we use to do our work is building relationships. So just producing a piece of paper or giving testimony at one public meeting isn't going to make a big change. We really need to build relationships over time, both with legislators and decision makers and other people around the state that care about conservation. And so as you can see, many of our members, because of their wealth of experience, that usually comes from having more years on this planet. And some of us have had quite a few years on this planet. But there are a lot of people who might be newer in their careers and in their conservation interests that have some really important things to say, important perspectives, and things that we need to listen to remain relevant today. And so last year, we started building some relationships with a group of students that we recruited as a student advisory council. And those students came to our annual meeting at Tree Haven last year. And we asked them to just join us, to be part of our meeting, and to really listen and to think about what questions they had for us and give us some feedback so that we could start to become an organization that's more meaningful to everyone, and particularly to younger people. As you probably saw in some of the things that you just heard, a lot of our membership is rural and northern parts of the state, all over the state, but there are so many people that live in urban areas and might have different concerns. So in the next couple of sections of this meeting today, we want to hear first of all from the Student Advisory Council. And they're just going to give a few insights into the experiences they've had with the organization and their thoughts on how we can be meaningful to younger people. And before I turn it over to them, I want to ask Nancy, if she is still here, just with the technology, if we can make sure to highlight the person that's talking so that we can see them well, in everybody who's at home can see that person and really hear what they're saying. So I want to start with Brianna. So Brianna, go ahead and give us your thoughts.
Hi. So I attended the meeting last year and I really had a great time. As you heard, there's lots of members with different expertise on different conservation issues and also the legislative process. And they've been very eager to share their knowledge and their projects with us and answer our questions. I also really liked that you could get involved in the different work groups or committees as little or as much as you wanted. And there's lots of different ways that you can help. Everyone was super welcoming and willing to answer our questions, and especially like about our careers. So I thought that was very helpful to have a group of people with these careers to help answer your questions and give you advice.
Great, thank you. And Cheyenne, if you are there. Oh, and maybe each of you could tell, but Brianna, before you leave, you just graduated from UW-Madison, and tell us your major and where you're going next.
Yeah, so I just graduated from Madison in civil and environmental engineering, and I'm taking a gap year right now working as a tutor, and I'm hoping to go back to school for environmental policy or environmental studies.
Great. So if each of the students could, tell us a little about yourself as well. So Cheyenne.
Dolly, could I just interject? If people want to focus on the speaker, they can go up to the upper right and click to speaker view instead of panel view, and you'll get to see everyone up and close.
Yeah, I just remembered that. Okay.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name's Cheyenne. I'm a third-year student at Northland College in Ashland, Wisconsin, but I'm originally from Nicoche de Pueblo in New Mexico. Yeah, I am majoring in natural resources with an emphasis in ecological restoration. And last year, I had the wonderful opportunity to attend Wisconsin Green Fire. Similar to Brianna, like there was a lot of knowledge present, and like everybody was welcoming. It just felt like a second home, especially being away from my home, but we got to learn about the different things in the area, like environmental wise, so get like a different perspective on that from like different views, because not only like were there environmentalists, but there's like lawyers and like yeah, just it was just a diverse group. Working with Wisconsin Green Fire, I've been working with Dolly to create a mentorship program. So yeah, it's super interesting, and they're open to like a lot of new ideas. So for the students, if you want to see something within Wisconsin Green Fire, most of the leadership are open to hear it and see how it goes.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Cheyenne.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, and how about, I think Will had to leave to go to class, but Laretha?
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Laretha Jack. I am a recent graduate from UWM, or UW-Milwaukee, and I majored in conservation and environmental science and biology, and right now I am applying to marine biology and ecology PhD programs. Last year, I also attended the Green Fire annual meeting, and I thought everybody was very welcoming and open to new ideas about student involvement. I got involved with the public trust doctrine and wetlands work group, but there are lots of work groups that span a variety of environmental issues, so you can kind of pick what group most aligns with your interests. And I think that involvement for students in Green Fire presents an opportunity for young scientists to connect with each other. Because I know that at the meeting last year, talking to the other students, we were kind of talking about like grad school and stuff. So it can be kind of like a support system for students, but it also gives them the opportunity to connect with experts in a lot of different environmental fields. So.
Great. And Chris?
Hi, I'm Christopher. I'm a recent graduate from the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh, and I'm currently working at a law firm downtown in Milwaukee. And I was introduced to Greenfire through Laretha, and I joined the student committee. And at first, I was just taken aback by the kindness and like the desire to mentor that a lot of the members displayed. And even though I liked that it was comprised of like career conservationists that range from lawyers to scientists, and like pretty much run the gamut of, professional realms. And so they could offer like you advice and mentor you through like your career, kind of give you like tips and guidance. And I think that also offers like invaluable networking and like professional guidance that can't be found in many organizations like this. And I think the one thing that really surprised me the most was that even though you all have like a wealth of knowledge and expertise, you were willing to like hear our opinions and insights and actually appreciated our involvement, and you actually were trying to integrate us into this organization in a meaningful way.
Great, thank you. And I guess I just want to echo what the students said in terms of our goals of really wanting to help nurture the next generation of conservationists and make sure that the next generation is more diverse than our generation was, and to really acknowledge that we are all stronger through getting more diverse viewpoints, whether that be in age or race or cultural background, whatever. We need to strengthen the environmental field through diversifying our professions. So that's really one of our goals. So before we go to some other students, we were going to pause here for questions. I don't see any burning questions in the chat room at this particular time. So maybe I will just encourage you all to type any questions that you have in the chat right now. And I think since there aren't any there right now, maybe we can go on with the other students. And so I did send some invitations out to a number of student groups around the state. And I'm hoping that maybe some of you who didn't contact me ahead of time can introduce yourselves before the end of this meeting. But we do have several students that are ready to speak about their own path and their involvement in conservation, how they got interested, just so that we could hear from some young people and hear what their interests are. And then we also have one representative of a student organization who's going to talk about that organization as well. So if we can start with Hanan, and we will welcome your thoughts. Hanan.
Hi there, nice to meet you guys. So I am working with Cream City Conservation over the summer, working in the environmental field and also going to school. I am a student at UW-Whitewater, junior right now. Initially, I had grown interest for the field of conservation and environmental fields through a volunteer group that I had worked with in high school. So in high school, we had worked on an urban farm, and I had gotten a chance to see about how you can incorporate green infrastructure and green planning in the middle of an inner city. And that initially has gotten me more interested in helping out my community in Milwaukee to incorporate more green programs and things to educate people and to gain access to fresh produce and things that we can probably take for granted in some areas. So I feel like my experiences with urban farming and with Cream City Conservation had opened my eyes to the potential of my field and where I can take it to. With Cream City Conservation, we had also done urban beekeeping, which had also sparked my interest because then you get to see how you can keep hives on top of roofs in the middle of a city, and teach people more about bees and the benefits of them. And also you gain some honey out of it. So as a young student, I am unsure about where I want to be with my career yet, but I do know that I want to go and improve my city, and give access to people to different environmental, like green infrastructure. I want to give like access for people that live in the city to like green infrastructure and yeah. Sorry about that, I get shy on camera. And I feel like the disconnection with the environment in cities and how much green spaces we lose in building cities, like it's a problem that we need to solve and that we need to figure out in the future.
Hanan, can you tell us, and maybe Ubaldo can expand on this too, a little more about Cream City Conservation and what it is and what it does? Because a lot of people here probably are new to that organization.
So Cream City Conservation is primarily focused on exploring different career paths and options and giving us like different opportunities and connections to build within like the environmental field. And it also gives us like the basic education and the tools we need basically to continue our careers in the environmental field. And for me, I am pretty thankful for that because Cream City Conservation has been like a stepping stone for me. I kind of knew what my interest was. My interest was like urban areas and, you know, incorporating the environment in the urban areas. And they gave me like a stepping stone, and I saw how I can take this thing that I like and make it into a career in my future. Yeah, if Ubaldo wants to add anything, he can go ahead as well.
Great, and we'll go to Ubaldo next, but I just want to mention that Cream City Conservation is the organization that was founded and is run by August Ball, who will be our speaker for the September 16th session that we're having on racial justice. And so she will talk a little bit more about it then. But both Hanan and Ubaldo got their start in conservation with that organization. So Ubaldo, you're next.
Hi, my name is Ubaldo. I am currently studying music at Southwestern Community College in Creston, Iowa. I got into this field out of pure curiosity. I started with botany and medicinal herbs, and then my teacher introduced me to August, and I got in contact with her, and I ended up doing conservation work, and that's what I've been doing for the past 2 summers. During school, I don't really have like much contact with the environment. The most contact I have is with the trail that's like down the street. So that's one thing. Currently, I'm working on my music career. I'm working on just being a jazz influencer, but I also wish to involve music with my environmental career and fuse the two at some point and see how that goes for me, and just end up motivating people to want to go into this field, help out, and make Wisconsin great. And
You're from Milwaukee.
yes, I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I dedicated myself to helping the Cream City develop Milwaukee, and I really like the idea of developing urban areas and having green spaces for people. As a kid, I didn't have much of that green space. I had very gray and very metallic structures. Now that I see Milwaukee growing, I'm seeing all the beautiful green structures with like actual clean water now. Like I don't see as much trash as I used to see before. There's this river next to me that almost got flooded during a huge storm, and I was curious why that happened, and now that I'm doing all this, I know everything and everything behind what's been going on, and I want to help out as much as possible now. And yeah.
Okay, great. So we've got a few questions, but I think I'm going to go ahead and let Nate talk next, and then maybe we can come back to some of these questions. So Nate.
All right, awesome. Hello, everybody. This is an awesome opportunity. I would like to thank everybody for having me. So a little bit about myself. I'm currently a senior at UWSP. My name's Nate Weisenbeck, and I'm originally from Wisconsin Rapids, Wisconsin. At UWSP, I'm studying wildlife ecology, and from the start of memories in my head, wildlife and animals have been at like the forefront of my life. Absolutely have a burning passion for them, and that's led me to some pretty amazing opportunities throughout my life to research and study and try to protect the species on our planet. So I'd really love as a career to be a biologist and then move into a professor at the end of my career. So that's kind of about my personal life. I just wanted to say that quick and then move into my organizational side of things. So I'm the president of the Wildlife Society at UWSP, and I'm super happy to represent that organization today. We actually are one of the largest, if not the largest, unofficially wildlife organization student chapter with usually from 170 to 200 members. So it's super, super cool. We've earned a ton of awards at the National Wildlife Society conferences, that being the most student chapter of the year awards, and then a ton of research awards as well that our students have all won. So it's amazing, amazing work going on in our society. And I think a big strength of ours is in our members. Having so many people gives us a lot of a greater impact, and we can do more work. A lot of our members have a lot of passion, like myself, and we want to have a voice. And when I heard about Greenfire and what they do, I was super excited to come and talk to you guys, because there are so many of us that feel that we need to say something, but we don't know where to say it, we don't know how to say it, and we don't know who to say it to. So as a student organization working in wildlife, we're typically out in the field, we're working with animals, we're not in courts, we're not in these political situations, and that's where I feel where we could have the most impact. Me personally, I got to work with the Wisconsin Wildlife Federation on the policy side of things and kind of get a little glimpse into how you start with the research and you move that into getting the info to the politicians and then pushing it on from there. But that's about it for me. So I know that there's a lot of us in the society that would love to have a voice, and I think that that partnership with Wisconsin Greenfire could be an amazing one. Having some students with a voice in these organizations could be a huge, huge thing for us. And I know that there are a ton of people that would be interested. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. So we've got a few questions, and actually one of them is a more of a comment, and I just want to reiterate it and sort of address it. It's, I'm always concerned about pinning all hopes on a particular generation. And yes, I agree completely. And that's why we really want to have this be a multi-generational effort, that we really all have different strengths to bring to this, and we really want to build those relationships between generations. So I think that's a really good point. So here's the first question from Paul Heinen. So this is for the students. This is a question for students. Are the environmental conservation majors at your college's fields that you see a lot of interest in, or are they small groups of people? At your campuses, do you see a lot of interest in environment and conservation? So any of the students can answer that.
Sure, I can field this one right away, and I can pass it to the other two to answer as well. At UWSP, conservation, wildlife, and natural resources at the forefront. It's definitely the pinnacle of what it is as far as schooling goes, and we're a bigger group, but I know that's not the case with other campuses. So I'd love to hear what the other students have to say.
In UW Whitewater, our current environmental science field, we have like 3 different emphases or whatever. And I'm in the geoscience emphasis. We also have a natural science emphasis and an environmental management emphasis. So I feel like we do have like a diversity of like courses you can take, and it's a pretty solid program. It's not like our top program, like UW Stevens Point. I think it's the top program they have. But in UW Whitewater, it's pretty good. It's a pretty good competitive program. We have a couple like groups like SAGE and a couple other green groups with our school. I have volunteered with my campus before for prairie seed picking and things like that. Yeah, pretty involved for sure.
So any of the other students chime in about how big this is at your campus?
At UWM, conservation and environmental science, I feel like most people usually double major with biology because the conservation and environmental science department is a lot smaller than the biology department, and a lot of the ways that because UWM is a great school because you can get involved in research really easily, but a lot of the research that you do is with biology professors. So I feel like there are a lot of students at UWM who are interested in conservation and environmental science, but it's something that they pair with biology. There is a conservation club at UWM. I actually never really had time to join it because I worked a lot when I was a student, but they do good work. They're not like a huge group. They're also, I know that like our geosciences department has kind of like their own group of like their own student clubs, and they do environmental stuff too, but in the frame of like geosciences. So yeah, Chris, how was it at Oshkosh?
At UW Oshkosh, they had some student organizations. I'm actually not even sure if they had an environmental science like major. They might have, but I did poli-sci, and there was a little bit of interplay with like learning about climate change in poli-sci, and they actually had some classes like science, policy, and politics that would have like interplay with like how the basic research of science and like even like climate science would influence policy and like politics and just like American opinions in general. But as for like the actual department, I don't even remember if they had one, but they might, and I just might not have noticed.
Okay. One thing that also came up was that we want to make sure students who are here today know that Wisconsin's Green Fire membership is free to students. So if you are not already a member, please go on our website and become a member, and it is free of charge and you will get all of our information. So since we have a few minutes, what I'd like to do is see if there are some other students that we haven't introduced yet. I think when we looked at the list, there were about 15 of you, or perhaps more. And so if there's anybody who is a student who's willing to say hello and who you are, we'd love to meet you. Or faculty. It says we have a UW Oshkosh faculty member here. So.
Hi, I'm James. I'm a junior at UW-Madison.
Oh, cool.
I'm studying atmospheric science.
Excellent. And what year are you?
I'm a junior, 3rd year.
Great. Thank you for joining us. Okay, I think Cheyenne had something she wanted to say. So, Cheyenne, are you still there? And do you have something you'd like to say?
Oh no, I was just gonna talk about like how environmentally focused Northland is, just to get in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Northland College is extremely environmental friendly. If you didn't already know, like I know some other schools like called us like the hippie school, just because like we're so environmentally focused. Like we have our own compost center that goes to like our field. A lot of our produce in the cafeteria is actually from local farmers in the Ashland area, which is pretty cool. It's all just environmental friendly, and I just wanted to say something about Northland.
Okay. Anybody else want to introduce themselves?
Hi, I wasn't sure if there's a way to raise my hand, but I'm Teresa and I wanted to introduce myself. I'm here on behalf as a student representative for the Water at UW group. And so I've just taken some notes and we can share. It was great to hear the kind of testimonials or information for students who have been involved with work groups here and pass that along to students at UW.
Great. Can you tell us a little bit about your group?
Sure, yeah. So the Water at UW group, I'm a new student representative this year. I'm a graduate student representative, and it's basically a way for faculty within the University of Wisconsin-Madison right now, but also with some ties to other system campuses to kind of have a centralized place to coordinate and share information about water research there. And I think this year especially, we want to have more of a connection to other campuses to bring in more water researchers around the state. And so definitely wanted to say hello through that and also pass along information about the efforts of Wisconsin Green Fire. And so there's definitely a newsletter out to any student who signs up. So students can sign up, faculty members, other staff members involved with water research.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing the word. And yeah, please get in touch with us. And James, who we just talked to, said he heard about this through you. So thank you so much for helping us spread the word. Do we have any other students that might want to be brave and introduce themselves? We'd love to meet you.
Hello, I'm Michael Clues, and I'm a sophomore at University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point, and I'm majoring in natural resource management with an emphasis in planning.
Excellent. And are you a member of any organizations that are at Point that might want to work with us?
Not at the moment.
Okay, great. But we'd love to hear more from you. So great. Thanks for being here today. Anybody else? Okay. Great. Terry, have you noticed any other questions that I'm missing?
I think we covered most of the questions. There were some comments that hopefully folks shared, and I think a lot of those also got covered during the comments by some of the student speakers.
Okay.
There was a couple of questions on how much Wisconsin Green Fire members are aware of student groups, and I think maybe that's something we could think about for future articles for our blogs or newsletters, maybe to highlight some of the student organizations that we could partner with a little bit more to make sure that general members of our organization know what they're doing.
Right, that's a really good idea. And so as I've been trying to get the word out to students and recruit students, it became obvious to me that there wasn't a real easy way to find student environmental organizations. There doesn't seem to be sort of one place that's a clearinghouse for student-led environmental organizations in the state. And maybe that's something that we could work with some other conservation groups to work on and put links on our websites, things like that, so that students can find each other and can find out about opportunities. So if any of you know of better ways to find interested students and to find out about student environmental groups, please let us know, because that's something we'd like to work on. So we are doing really amazing according to time here. So if we have any other questions, please interject them at any time. We can always come back and answer questions. But what we're going to do next is go to some breakout rooms. And so this is really new technology to most of us, but I think we can do it. We've got some people who will be moderating this. We've got 3 different questions that we want all of the groups to address, and we've got about 20 minutes for these breakout groups. And so Nancy is going to assign us, and in each breakout group, there will be a moderator and hopefully at least one of the students that's with us here today. And there'll be about 3 to 4 to 5 people in a group. So at any moment now, you are going to find yourself invited to a breakout group. And Fred, meanwhile, Fred is going to share his screen with the questions. I hope everybody figured out the breakout rooms and had a chance to give your perspective. And I know my group had some great ideas. So we'll wait a few minutes and make sure everybody's back. Oh, well, good. What's the contest then? Thanks. Wow, well, that's exactly what we hoped would happen here. Yeah, our group talked about some of the same things, not as specific, but that grad student research could add such an important piece, but I'm sure what grad students are working on and more current cutting edge science could really enrich the kinds of things that we're doing. So that's great.
Yep.
We also talked about mentoring and maybe different levels where that could work, both on a one-on-one kind of basis, but also now with the world of the internet, students posting questions on a blog and multiple people might be able to answer them. So I think lots of good ideas in a short time. So any other moderators?
Our plan is to get all, I was just going to say, I think our plan is to get all these ideas compiled, and we will provide those to folks that came to the meeting, to the seminar. So, and not to cut short other folks reporting out, but our group had some great ideas too, but
yep.
We'll get them back to you guys.
Okay, so we want to hear your feedback. Moderators, please make sure you email me any notes that you took or any feedback that anybody would like to share. And I can put my email again in the chat box. I'll do that right now. But we'll go to Terry and Fred, who want to close our session today. And I want to thank you all for coming, and particularly the students for being willing to share your ideas and your thoughts. And please join so that we can keep in touch with you. And I hope that we can collaborate with you individually or your organizations. Thank you.
So I just have kind of a short inspirational story to end with, and then I think I'll turn it over to Fred for some shameless promotion on our upcoming additional programs. But Fred, if you don't mind, I'll take the floor first and then turn it over to you, because I know you have a slide to use to help inspire people about coming back for our next session. So, you know, everyone's all about storytelling these days, and I started with my coffee story, which probably wasn't a very good or long story, but I wanted to come back to that and say that, you know, the story of that coffee cup, I think that it was an idea that a lot of people were having around their coffee table or in the evenings around their dining room tables, and has, you know, kind of come to fruition with all the folks from Greenfire that have come together. And a lot of the people in our organization are such an inspiration to me. And a lot of the young people today who are on were also inspiring to me. So I thought I would just share a quick quote from one of my early mentors, Sigurd Olson, who, if you're not familiar with his work, he was primarily interested in wilderness and the spiritual values that people get out of being in nature. And when I was a young career professional just out of college, I actually worked at the Sigurd Olson Environmental Institute up at Northland College. And I had to show a film strip. Well, it was actually a film, not a film strip, about the life and times of Sigurd Olson over and over again to visiting groups. But there was one part of this film that I just loved. It showed Sigurd Olson walking along. He lived up in Ely, Minnesota, near the Boundary Waters, and he had this beautiful cabin out on the shore of a lake, and he walked along in this big stand of pine trees. And he had this wonderful quote that I'd like to read to you about what he thinks about the importance of young people and of working together. And what he said was, young people come to me and they ask me, what is your hope for the world? And I always answer that the hope for the world is in them. And then Sig would take a hold of this little, he's standing by this huge old pine tree, and he would take a hold of this little pine tree that was next to him. He said, you are the next generation. I am the old generation, just like this little tree here. This is a sapling, and right beside it is one of these enormous red pines. And the sapling, it epitomizes you and the hope for the world. So when you wonder how things are going, just remember that. You have a task to do. You've got to carry on the battle to preserve beautiful places like this. And the battle goes on endlessly. It's your task. You've got to keep the flame alive no matter what the obstacle, because the whole world depends on you. Just as the whole world depends on this little pine in a sense. And just like it also depends on the enormous tree. And for me, at that time, I was sort of felt like the little tree, or maybe I thought it was a little bit of a bigger tree, but not a really big tree. And now that I'm getting more towards the older tree, I look back at how the partnership between all of those things kind of comes together, and how, for me, working with younger people and people in middle generations, all of us pulling in together is what I think makes this inspiring and fun and energizing. So I'm just really appreciative for everybody that took the time today to come to the session, and in particular for the young people who are interested in working with us and sharing that good work with us as we move forward in time, and trying to make sure the world is in a good, healthy condition for future generations. So that's kind of my little closing inspiration for everyone, and I'll turn it over to Fred for a few final words.
Great. Well, thank you, Terry. And your story inspired me to put up one of my favorite tree photos. And for those of us old trees, yes, thanks all of you for participating today. Just to put some real detail on what Terry said, I'm reminded this afternoon of how many Green Fire members it takes to change a light bulb. And part of the value of having so many different people here was that it took us literally 20 minutes to figure out how to make the chat box work for this program. Now, those of you that signed on at 4:30 didn't get to appreciate that, but thanks to Nate and several others of you who helped walk yours truly through the instructions, so we were able to do that. So literally, we were stronger together today. I also want to just mention a couple things. There's a lot to follow up on. We had some really good discussions. I know that all of our groups did. I would like to ask Ubaldo later to explain to me what an influencer actually does, and how you get paid to be one. Because I think when I grow up, I'd love to figure out how to do that somehow. I think for all of you that had ideas today or thoughts you want to follow up on, as Dolly said, please do that. Please make sure we know how to get in touch with you. I think we're really committed as an organization to continuing to build these engagements and help all the generations in our state appreciate our conservation heritage. So on to the shameless pitches. Number one, you're invited to participate in our survey, and there's a link to the survey for today's program up in the chat box. Feel free to copy that and use it, and you'll get that in an email tomorrow as well. And as those of you who are students, we also invite you to join. and that's easy to do. I'm going to just quickly then talk for a minute about upcoming programs here in September. We have a really rich set of programs teed up here for this month, thanks to Dolly and many of our members who've worked hard to put these together, including today's. So next week, a week from tonight, as a matter of fact, for those of you that were intrigued about Cream City Conservation, you will have a chance to spend 2.5 hours with August Ball, who is the founder and director of Cream City Conservation, in the program that she's leading for us on understanding racial equity and inclusion in conservation. And that program is being co-hosted by Greenfire, by the Wisconsin Land Trust Organization Gathering Waters, and by the Natural Resources Foundation of Wisconsin. And with our three organizations, we're really sharing a commitment to exploring what understanding racial equity and environmental justice means for us as an organization, and what it means that we'll do differently in the future. And so this conversation is really a beginning of that, and you're invited. 2 weeks from tonight, on September 23rd, we've got a panel of legislators and a state agency leader to join us, to be on the hot seat for an hour and a half while we talk about the reality of next year's state budget and what it'll mean for conservation and the environment. So we'll be joined by Senator LaTanya Johnson from Milwaukee, Senator Rob Coles from the Green Bay area, Senator Janet Bewley from the Ashland area, and Representative Joel Kitchens from the Door County area, who all are very involved in environmental and conservation work in the legislature, as well as Assistant Deputy Secretary of the Wisconsin DNR, Todd Ames. So Paul Heinen and I will be helping lead that conversation, and I think, especially given the challenges we know are in front of us next year with a tough state budget and a pandemic, and lots of other challenges, this will be an important conversation. Both of these two conversations will also be live cast by Wisconsin Eye, which is Wisconsin's nonprofit civic affairs broadcast channel. On September 25th, our keynote for our annual meeting will be presented by former US Senator and committed conservationist and Greenfire member, Russ Feingold. And Russ, I think all of you know that Russ served Wisconsin for many years as both a state legislator and a US Senator. But since then, he's really carved out a niche in the world of conservation, including his work with the global organization dedicated to global biodiversity. And he'll talk about that work. He'll also inspire us to think about ways in which our work is important, not just here in Wisconsin, but around the world. And finally, Saturday morning on the 26th will be our annual meeting, our traditional annual meeting session online that will include both our business meeting as well as discussions and updates from our work groups. You get a chance to learn more about what Greenfire is digging our teeth and heels into this year. And we'll have as well some opportunity for all of you to meet some of our other members. So we hope that you'll get a chance to join us for some or all of those programs. And on behalf of all of us at Greenfire, thanks for participating tonight and kicking off our annual meeting month. And with that, Dolly, anything else you'd like to say before we close?
No, just thank you for coming and hope to see you next week.
Thank you to Dolly and Nancy for helping us run this thing.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
See you soon.